Hello, this is Stephanie Gunning, and I'm back with another one of my author interviews. I am enjoying talking with CC Webster, who is a former advertising industry executive who specialized in pharmaceutical healthcare advertising for an agency in New York City. Diagnosed with lymphoma at age 29, she began her course through treatment, which led to the exploration and discovery of health, happiness, and herself. From first diagnosis to her current remission, CC has combined Eastern and Western medicine to wage a war on cancer and support her body throughout its fight. The result has been the discovery of a healthier self, a happier self, a new self. Due to the success of her integrative and explorative approach, CC now shares her story in hopes of helping others become their happiest, healthiest, optimal selves too. And at the very least, she invites humor along the way. I would say, CC, you invite a ton of humor. I have enjoyed working with you as your editor so much on this project, which is called So That Happened. And this is the memoir of the year from right before your diagnosis to your finishing treatment and deciding you were going to leave advertising and do something new with your life.
Right.
So you tell this. I'm gonna start with the end of your book. You tell this very funny story at the end of your book about your grandfather. Will this be a? Will I be giving it away if we say it here? I mean, there's something. So how do you? So I guess I should say this. So you had lymphoma. How many people do you think in the United States get lymphoma every year?
There are actually two types of lymphoma. And lymphoma is actually a blood cancer. So it's systemic. It's the one type of cancer that once you get it, it travels pretty quickly throughout your entire body. Now, I had Hodgkin's lymphoma as opposed to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And actually, I found that many people think they're the same thing. Ironically, the doctors said, if you had cancer or if you were going to get cancer, this one, the one you got, is the best kind. So you're really lucky. I mean, sitting there in the oncologist's office, you're like, what?
You didn't feel that lucky, I'm sure.
So yeah.
So this is rare.
Incredibly rare. It's actually 3,000 people out of the United States get diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which
out of 300 million, 3,000.
Yes.
And so it's survivable, obviously.
Yes. So it is the most, they don't really use the word cure, or oncologists and clinicians don't use the word cure with cancer, but this one is dubbed the most curable cancer, if you could use that word. So it's the highest remission rates.
And 29 feels very young to me for somebody to get cancer.
So that actually, lymphoma targets, for lack of a better word, the younger spectrum. So basically young 20s. So you're really, most lymphoma patients are 18 to 25 or 18 to 30. And then it skips your mid years, and then you become more susceptible past 50 to 65-ish. That's what they told me. But yes, was I the youngest person sitting in the infusion center? By about 30 years.
Wow. So it must have just felt like it came just out of the blue.
I was living a healthy, normal 29-year-old life. I was working hard. I was hanging out with my friends on the weekends. I was active, still am. I ate healthy. Did I enjoy a couple glasses of wine on the weekends? Absolutely. During the week, definitely. It was a normal New York City fast lifestyle. I was dating and now married to an investment banker. He was working late hours, as was I. In the advertising world, it's incredibly demanding. I thrived on that. And then to get whacked with a diagnosis that was so debilitating and life-changing, I mean, it rattled my world. So I thought it might be a good story.
All right, I want to go back to your grandfather, because
Yes.
I love this. You got to the end of your book, and which is 13 chapters long, and you arrive, and there's this coda on the end of your book. Can you tell the story of your grandfather?
So my grandfather was in World War II. He was, he fought, we're Canadian, so he fought for the Allied forces on the Canadian side. They were first in to help the British against the Germans, and it was actually a very devastatingly famous Battle of Dieppe, which is on the beaches of Normandy. And I don't think the Americans had gotten involved at this point yet, to my historical recollection. I could be wrong, but
everybody died. Let's just put it that way.
It was
like a disaster for the Allies, right?
It was a disaster. So basically, and there are theories now that believe that say that these soldiers, the troops, they were literally sent to their deaths. I mean, the Secret Service, all the information pointed to a victory for the Germans, because the Germans already knew that the attack was coming.
Oh, God.
They had geographical advantages. They were literally walking into a trap across this beach. And my grandfather was one of the first ones off the boat, and he, you're wading through the water, and you're getting yourself across this beach in between shots and explosions.
Boom, boom, boom. It's like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan or something. Yeah.
Totally. And it is incredibly dramatic. I think there's a movie about it. But he was later somehow got over that beach with everybody dying or losing limbs next to him. He lost only a toenail. That's it.
A toenail, right.
A single toenail got shot clean off with a bullet.
Okay, so the parallel is that, I mean, yay, he lived, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You had cancer. He had a toenail shot off. Devastating experience, but life goes on afterwards, right?
Yes. Life goes on.
Is that what your title means? I mean, we don't really know what the rest of your life will be, but you're like, so that happened.
I think the parallel, and it's funny that my mind went to that memory and that familial story of my grandfather and his toenail. It's funny that when I was closing the book, that's where my mind went. And I believe it's a sentiment that most people who had cancer or who might have cancer now, and even you could stretch it beyond people who are sick, at some point in your life, you might feel like the lucky one. And why was I lucky?
Right.
And I feel like this has resonated with people in the early days of the launch of this book, and I'm so happy that it has. But I've gotten a couple emails from very, friends of friends of friends, due to this kind of trickle effect that's happening with people reading the book. And I've gotten an email from somebody who, she was very young, and she was diagnosed with a different type of blood cancer. It was leukemia. Similar treatment. Obviously, everybody has a different course, but she wrote and she said, I have been suffering with understanding why I was so lucky in this, because I never struggled in terms of a biopsy, and I didn't die, and I I came out fine and so many other people didn't. And how she wrote so beautifully how she didn't understand why that happened to her. And she almost felt guilty that she was a cancer patient and considered healthy and fine and normal. And she explained how she would almost, slap herself on the wrist for saying I'm normal after being sick when she tried to rejoin her life. It's something that I believe people struggle with, whether you're sick or not, is that feeling of why was I the lucky one?
Is that part of the motivation for why you wrote the book? To understand?
I've been thinking about why I wrote this damn book for a long time, especially during the process.
Well, so I want to tell a little story here before you go on. You
okay.
That while I ruminate on this story. So, earlier in 2017, like in the spring sometime, maybe
in the spring,
May, we were talking about April or May, I decided to go out to lunch downtown with my friend Larry, who's also from the publishing industry. He's a former CEO and a muckety-muck of something. And so he suggests this lovely little bistro down in Chelsea, and we're sitting outside. It's a warm day. I'm very excited. So now I've got my sweaters on, but that day I was like peeling them off and looking up the sun with my shades on, which I love wearing, and, having my European food. And I'm going on and on and on about what I'm trying to do with my publishing business. And then I said to him, hey, I think I should have like an evening event. And I hear this voice from the next table, I'll come. And CC had been eavesdropping for like an hour.
No.
I didn't mind.
I timed it.
I did not mind
2.5 hours. 2.5 hours.
It was a long lunch, and it was an intricate and interesting lunch. And the funny thing was, I had just said to Larry, he had said, where do you get your clients? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like, there, that's how.
Like that. God,
so we exchanged cards, and we had a phone call, and then she said, I'm writing this book. And this was part of your post-advertising agency plan, I gather. And you're a wonderful writer. But that's my side of the story. But what got you to that moment that you already had that burning desire to write the book?
So I left my job, and when I left my job at the agency, and again, pharmaceutical advertising. So of course that puts a unique perspective on, getting sick and really supporting myself in every way that I could through treatment with alternative medicine. So I came to the conclusion to leave my job because I could feel that, the relentless stress and the high speedness of that type of job, and climbing that corporate ladder so intensely and dedicated to the next promotion, and it just wasn't for me anymore. And I explain why in the book. I believe that also might resonate with people of my age as well in their careers. But I took myself out to lunch because
Sorry, you're out to lunch. Okay.
I took myself out to lunch that day.
And I never went back.
Today is the day. I said, I need to get out of my apartment. I have no idea what to do with my life, but I know that I want to write this book, that I need to write this book. And I said, I need to get these creative juices flowing, maybe have a little glass of wine, a little salad. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, all right, now how do we even start writing a book? And of course, when I'm procrastinating, I'm going to eavesdrop to those next to me.
Nobody ever said I talk softly.
I mean, the tables in New York, very
right. We're like right
together. We're basically communally eating. So who the hell's sitting next to me? But this person who's an editor. And she started her career at HarperCollins. And I was just like, how is this possible? The fates have intervened again. This was like the 10th sign that I had gotten. And I had opened myself up basically to, the universe. I had no idea with what I was doing with my life. And I needed direction. And even earlier that week, I'd gone to the FedEx office and mailed, a wedding gift to my friends. And the guy behind the FedEx desk was like, okay, what's the sender's name? And I said, CC Webster. And he stopped what he was doing. He said, do you know that's a writer's name? And I said, amazing. What? And this is when I didn't know what I was, but I said, yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
That's the way it works.
The next day, I sit next to you, and I learned so much listening into your conversation for 2.5 hours. I learned about self-publishing. I learned about what it takes to start writing a book, how to go about, making that connection between, finding an editor to getting a manuscript together. It was an incredible amount of information. And so my salad and my glass of wine came and went. And I was like, I am just going to die if I don't lean across this breadbasket and introduce myself, because this can only happen in New York. The perfect segue. They want to throw a party. I'm like, I'm coming.
Right. Well, so what people listening need to know is that CC wrote her book incredibly quickly. Within a matter of a couple of weeks, we dove into a process together where she was outlining and writing chapters, and I was giving feedback and editing and whatever. I mean, the process was intense and also extremely pleasurable. At least for me, it was. I mean, I think it was for you. So CC, you write with this incredible combination of humor and I'm I'm kind of a weeper, so she would come to my apartment and sit down and look at my face, and if I had a tear in my eye, she would feel successful. So like the laughing and crying in equal measure, let's say. And I do feel like you really got to some very, very honest moments in your writing, and this is not easy to write about stuff like this, particularly when it's not many, many, many years behind you. You haven't yet had time to package it with a nice bow on the top. Now you do, but when you started, not. And for me, when I read a memoir of somebody's traumatic experience, too often, the first-time writer is essentially just venting. And I feel that you've done something more than that.
Yeah.
Who are your literary archetypes that you?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I read over and over again David Sedaris. Now,
great essayist.
Augusten, Burroughs. I love that satirical kind of a little dark comedy. Unintentional, but there's satire in life sometimes, and laughter is so healing that I really wanted to build my story around being honest, and sometimes this shit was funny, like it was weird. I wanted to share that as an experience, and I really, I heard David Sedaris's voice, or what I thought to be his voice, in my head as I wrote, and he really helped me, his writing really helped me get familiar with transitions and opening sentences, how to start with an idea and kind of roll with it into like your actual point of what you're trying to say. He does that so interestingly. And yeah, he was really, really helpful to me. His books were, when I was writing.
I love that. I mean, I think that one of the best ways that a writer can learn how to write, and it's something that I constantly do, is I pick up motifs and style from really good writers.
Yeah.
I'm always reading somebody. When you read good writing, there's a marked difference, is there not? You know,
Oh.
it like hits you, and you go, "Oh my God, I suck. This is great." And then you go, "Wait, I can do that too."
I know.
I'm gonna borrow that.
But I really, in terms of how and many people ask me, like, how do you even start writing a book? How do you write a book? How do you know what to write? This was very much, as you can imagine, cathartic for me. I wrote this in the year after cancer happened. It was still, as you said, very fresh. And I was figuring out all of this and trying to process all of it in this book. And I think reading it, you will see that, and you'll grapple with it too, along with me.
To me, what you've captured is, first of all, a very honest accounting of what you saw and experienced from how chemo affected you, but also prior to the treatment.
Yeah.
There's this great chapter when you're essentially nesting and preparing, because you still felt pretty good. I mean, you felt like
good enough.
You felt sick, like you had cancer,
yeah.
but you weren't sick from the treatment yet.
Yes.
And you're running around getting what you need and setting up your house, and I love how you talk about your lounge wear.
I mean, I was told,
you're like nesting, and there's a scene where you go into the soul cycle, where everybody is like high energy, and
cycle,
ramped up and exhilarated, and you're like, and so there's a lot of contrast, because it's almost as if you're describing being pulled out of ordinary reality and into this parallel dimension, right? And then how that affects your relationship, with your boyfriend, who's now your husband, and there's a wonderful chapter where you go to a party and you've already lost your hair.
It was 3 days after I buzzed my hair.
Yeah.
And it was quite a shock to the party people.
Yeah, the party people.
As well. And I think that sentiment, again, being pulled out of your life and placed in this body that feels foreign to you, you don't have to be sick to recognize that feeling. I've spoken with young mothers, and they're like, "Where did my body go?" And these are sentiments that I feel that are relatable, if you're sick or not.
It's aging is like that too, right?
Exactly.
Like, I had a friend who was an older man who happened to have very wrinkly face. I mean, more than normal. And he wasn't even that old. This is a guy I used to act with. And yeah. I loved this guy. And he told me he would look in the mirror in the morning and he'd be like shocked every single morning. He's like, what?
Honestly, I put a hat on yesterday that covered all my hair, and I passed the mirror and whoa, it's back.
It's back.
I mean,
oh no, I have to cut it again.
Shocking yourself when you see yourself is something that we all unfortunately experience at some point in our lives. And it's real and it's honest and it's painful, but I mean, at least putting it out there and saying this is something that you can experience and grow from, that this is a side effect of transformation, is really powerful, I think. So hopefully that's a message that comes through clearly.
I love it. So the beauty for me of helping somebody like you to write is that, you know, I could give you a kind of a hint of a thing you might do.
Yes.
And you would run with it, you know what I mean? And so you were like, this was something that was flowing, and, you know, I feel like there was an incredible rightness to this. Your original idea, is it okay if I talk about your original?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, was to do essays, almost like short vignettes on different kinds of alternative therapy, because for you, it was remarkable to you that you could have been in pharmaceutical advertising and then preferred, you know, going to get acupuncture or work with a naturopath or you know, stuff like that. And that does show up at intervals in the book, because one of the themes is how you took care of yourself, right?
Yes.
And yet I really, and it's funny because for a lot of people, I steer them in that direction. I'll say, don't write your memoir first, write your nonfiction, you know, book, you know, your guidebook first or whatever. Yeah. But your voice in this book, you know, demanded that you tell the story, you know, so I kept saying, it's almost like the first half of the book, or even 2/3 of it, was me encouraging you to go back to the beginning and write the whole thing, which of course was the part you didn't want to think about initially. But you are, you know, you went back all the way to being a little girl and growing yourself up, like in the first chapter or two. And for me, your willingness to like reveal your hopes and dreams, then I could really go with you on the ride, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you did it. I think you succeeded. So, you know, yay, CC.
Yay. Thank you.
I mean, I really think it's a very good read. And I've read it like a lot.
I know.
Anyway. So where are you going to go from here with this? Are you going to be doing some speaking?
So what I'd like to continue exploring is, you know, getting this story out there. And again, as I said, there's a nice little organic trickle effect going on right now. People are handing the books to their friends. And, you know, I thought I'd expand on that and throw some parties, get people together, do a little speaking.
Yay, 2018.
Really, in the same approach that I took to supporting myself and, you know, trying all these different things like acupuncture and Reiki and cranial sacrum therapy and all these things. I'm really, without really a compass, this is, I'm kind of letting it roll and seeing what happens, which is one of the best things that I learned in the year that cancer happened.
Just to let life happen?
Just to let it happen and see what happens, because it's amazing when you let go of the reins and see how your life unfolds, see where it takes you. I remember, and going back to, again, why the hell I wrote this book. I remember one of my parents' friends was a children's book author. And she came over to our house for dinner one night, and I was maybe like 8 years old, sitting at the dining room table with everybody, and I was just starstruck. I couldn't believe that we had a real life author sitting at the table. I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't stop touching the book. I just thought it was magic. And I think the idea that you can produce something from nothing or from right out of your head and have it live forever is remarkable. And
Hold the cover up again. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you know, I should remark that you know, you worked with the designer, but that concept came from you.
Yeah, I did. I worked with a really great designer who brought it to life, but I really thought that there was beauty in the scars. And I really responded to something that showed that. And I believe that the cover is strong and it's brave, but it's also weak and beautiful.
Feminine, yeah.
And you can see that she's sick, but you know, she's literally bearing all. But I think it's sexy and intriguing, but it's showing your weakness and your vulnerability, and there's something powerful in that. I don't know how many people have said how they've hidden their scars, and I really pushed myself to not hate all the scars on my chest, where the port was, where the keloid scars are, where the biopsy on my neck. I'm wearing it's freezing, but
yes, it's winter in New York. It's very cold. I know, really like
literally -5.
Oh, Mary.
But I can't stress the power and the bravery in exposing those scars in whatever form they take for anybody, because it's really something, and we really are a force. So,
well, look, you went through the hardest, you know, one of the hardest things that anybody can go through in their life, you know, cancer, and you came out the other side. And then you turned it into this beautiful, funny, inspiring, moving book. So, you know, kudos to you. And so people should go over to CC's website, which is Webster Works. That's the name of her publishing company. Sign up for her mailing list. Find out where she's going to be. You're going to want to read this book. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can find the links on her website. And, you know, you're going to want to read this. If you know anybody who's going through this experience or has gone through this experience, this is not a depressing book at all. It's just an honest portrait, and you know, I'm very proud to have been involved in it. But it's all you, CC. You brought it to light and you lived it. So, congratulations.
Thank you. It was honestly, it was one of the best things that helped me, and I hope it can help somebody who might be experiencing challenge in their lives.
It's very human, yeah. All right, that's websterworks.com. All right, thanks again, CC. Talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm going to just end this.